So I'm looking at your SP Plus projections, and OU's at 1, and my goodness, Texas is at 2. Despite going 5-7 last year, they're projected to finish second in the conference. Did SP Plus take in Arch Manning's commitment? Like, how is that what the bump is from, Bill? What's going on here?
Well, I think the most noteworthy thing isn't necessarily that Texas is second in the conference as much as they're 31st overall. They're only projected to improve a little bit. The interesting part is that Texas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Baylor, and TCU are all, and really Texas Tech as well, really close together. They're all OSU and Baylor, again, like I was saying, they lose a ton of production, so they are projected to fall back to the pack a bit. Kind of curious with Baylor. It's really easy to see what Dave Aranda put together last year and just assume, okay, well, that's just what they're going to be. No matter who's on the field, they're going to be awesome in these specific ways, and maybe that's true. But with how ridiculously volatile Baylor's been over the last 5 years, where it's like 1 win, 6, 11, 2, 12, or whatever it was. They don't get the benefit of the doubt from the numbers just yet. So yeah, Texas squeezes into that number 2 spot. They're still really far behind Oklahoma and much, much closer to like the 5 teams below them. But I mean, to that extent though, recruiting does play a role. So Texas always ends up getting a little bit of a bump in the projections from that, even though they've had 4 losing seasons in the last 8 years, which is still just absolutely mind blowing. They at least get the benefit of the doubt from that part.
Something interesting on our show the other day when we were talking about OU Texas. Texas has out-recruited Oklahoma 14-8 over the last 22 recruiting cycles. But the games over the same span, OU's beat them 14-7. So it's flipped. And what's interesting is we couldn't think of any other case where a team consistently out-recruits one team and the other team consistently beats them. It seems like something that doesn't really ever happen. I mean, there's probably some out there,
yeah,
but we couldn't really find any. So that's just a fascinating aspect with Texas.
Yeah, I think the only way I can make sense of Texas in general, and basically the last 40 years of Texas, is it seemed this should be an easy job in terms of money and recruiting and all this. It's clearly a really, really hard job. And it's Texas's fault. It's a hard job, but it's really hard to come up with examples of, booster influence and arrows pointed in a whole lot of different directions, and being really hard to wrangle all those pieces. But basically, when it comes to coach hires, I've basically just taken a look at it at the team instead of the coach they hire. Like OU's made basically 2 bad hires in 75 years. So Venables is probably going to be a good hire. Ohio State, same way. Like, when's the last time they made, John Cooper took a little while. He still almost won a couple national titles. They haven't made a bad hire in 70 years. And so Texas has made 1 good hire in 40 years, like period. Like everybody else has underachieved compared to recruiting rankings. This is a really hard job. And Sark, I'm not going to say that Sark isn't going to get it done, but he certainly didn't show last year that he can get all the arrows pointed in the right direction. Maybe Arch Manning, well, number one, it's going to buy him time, right? Like even if they struggle again this year, they're probably not going to risk losing Arch by getting rid of Sark. So that'll help him in that regard. But man, I mean, if Quinn Ewers starts this year, is that because Sark thinks he's the best quarterback, or because the boosters bought him and said he's going to start this year? Like it's a hard job. It's really hard. And OU is dramatically easy by comparison, I think.
There's got to be a part of you that whenever all the data spits out Texas at number 2, you go, damn it.
I know. Yeah, especially with the way OSU and Baylor played last year. I thought this was a good opportunity to avoid that, but sure enough, there they are. And I mean, FPI has them a lot higher. That I can say that. I only have them 31st. That's the one thing I can lean on, but they are still second in the conference.
Yeah, I think that probably says a lot about the state of the Big 12 currently. But I will say, I expect Texas's offense to be really good. with
Absolutely.
Ewers and Bijan, Xavier Worthy, Whittington if he's healthy, Nair, the transfer, Ajay Hall, right? Transfer. Like they've got talent. The offense should be good, but I've got no idea about their defense. I got no idea if they're going to improve.
And Gary Patterson, that is another weird dynamic, right? You just you pulled Pete Kwiatkowski from Washington where he always succeeded, and they struggled last year, and you just hired as a special assistant one of the most successful defensive coaches of the last 20 years. That's going to be kind of a weird dynamic in the defensive coaches room. Maybe it'll be fine. I'm not going to guarantee it won't be, but that is still unique. It's going to be unique all the way around. And they were 86 defensively last year per SP plus. So there's a ton of room for improvement there. And it's hard to guarantee it's going to be a dramatic improvement.
Yeah. One of my worries about Texas is that, take a guy like Bijan Robinson, for example. They play Alabama early.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing, a freshman quarterback, assuming Quinn Ewers is the guy that gets the job, it wouldn't be. You would expect him to struggle some early,
right?
And if things go bad, they lose a couple of games. A running back like Bijan, what's to keep him from saying, you know what,
right.
I've made some money here. I'm good. I'm going to be maybe the best running back in this draft class. I've had some NIL stuff. I'm going to step away so I don't get injured. That's one of the things that kind of worries me about some of their returning players.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of a permanent concern now with a given team moving forward. If you have high expectations and a lot of juniors, how's that going to play out if you suffer some early disappointments? I'm curious if NIL has an effect on that, just in terms of, you got to be on the field to make the maximum amount of money or whatever. But
you got to play, or else you got to give the Lamborghini back.
Right, exactly. Once you opt out, you got to say goodbye. I have no idea. Like obviously,
that's called a soft opt out, where you really nurse that ankle.
I was about to say that my ankles just really bother me. I can't shake it. Yeah. That will be, but in general, we are seeing with NIL, we are seeing potentially, it seems a lot, more people staying in school for an extra year and all that. So maybe that has an effect, but it will be an interesting year. Also, as far as Alabama in week 2, does that affect the quarterback situation? Like, if you just assume that whoever is starting against Alabama is going to struggle, and you end up losing by the projected margins, 14 points, what if it's like 21 or 24? Like, does that affect who you start out the year with? If Hudson Card is just out playing Quinn Ewers in practice and everybody's going to be freaked out, maybe you let him get roughed up by Alabama. And then
I'd say Will Anderson will definitely have an effect on the quarterback play moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's going to be, there are just so many extra variables you have to consider with any school, but especially with Texas. And I mean, good luck, Sark. If he figures it out, he's going to win a ton of games, but a few guys actually figure it out.
Can you imagine if they start a true freshman tackle in that game against
God.
Will Anderson? Oh my gosh.